She'll never say it out loud, but she can feel it. She knows when you've shifted your focus from your purpose to her. She knows when you've built your life around gaining her attention instead of becoming the man you're meant to be. And the moment she senses it, something changes. Respect begins to fade. Desire starts to disappear. You go from being the man she admired to the man she simply tolerates. This is where so many men lose themselves. They let go of their vision, abandon their mission, and disconnect from their identity, all in the name of keeping a woman close. They call it love. They think it's loyalty. But in reality, it's surrender. And a true Stoic, he never surrenders who he is. If you want to understand the difference between men who are respected, desired, and grounded, and those who are overlooked, discarded, or forgotten, stay here. Because I'm about to share one of the most powerful truths a Stoic lives by. He never chases a woman like his happiness depends on it. When you chase someone as if your emotional well-being rests in their hands, you've already given up the most sacred thing you have, your sovereignty. Too many men have been conditioned to believe that their worth is measured by a woman's validation. They're told she's the prize, so they overcompensate. They buy gifts, send constant messages, rearrange their entire lives just to keep her attention. And when they get it, they call it love. But let's be honest, it's not love. It's emotional dependency. And dependency is a form of slavery. Stoicism teaches that true fulfillment doesn't come from people. Outcomes or external approval. It comes from within, from living with virtue and mastering yourself. So when you chase someone out of desperation, you're making a silent confession. You're my source of happiness, my reason to feel alive. And when that source leaves, you fall apart. That's why chasing is so dangerous. It makes your emotional stability dependent on someone else, someone who doesn't owe you anything. You give up your power, and you hope they handle it with care. The Stoic takes a different path. He doesn't reject love or relationships, but he never lets them define his identity. He sees love as something that complements his life, not completes it. He doesn't chase, he attracts. He doesn't beg, he builds. And because he's grounded, his presence alone pulls people in. Not because he's trying, but because he doesn't need to. That energy, calm, confident, and independent, is rare, and women feel it. Not as dominance, not as control, but as emotional safety, because she knows he won't lose himself in her. She knows she can't manipulate his sense of worth. And that's what draws her in. Not desperation, but direction. Not pleading, but purpose. That's what separates a Stoic from the rest. And that, paradoxically, is what draws her closer. Because here's a truth many men don't want to confront. If you're chasing a woman, it's rarely because of love. More often it's because you're afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of not being good enough. Afraid of being forgotten. But fear-driven action never leads to fulfillment, it leads to misery. The Stoic man knows this. He says, I want her, but I do not need her. I will open my hand, not clench my fist. If she stays, good. If she leaves, also good. That's not indifference, that's strength. That's freedom. That if you find yourself constantly chasing, always texting first, doing all the planning, or trying to win her back every time she pulls away, pause, step outside yourself and ask honestly, would I still respect me if I saw myself from the outside? Am I behaving like a grounded man, or like a boy begging for attention? That moment of clarity can change your life, because once you shift your energy back to building yourself, your health, your mind, your purpose, everything begins to change. Expand your world, deepen your friendships, pursue passions that don't revolve around her, and most importantly, learn to walk away not to prove a point, not to manipulate, but because it's who you are. A man who walks away when his values are compromised is a man who stands tall no matter who stays or leaves. When you stop chasing, you communicate one thing clearly: my happiness is mine. You're welcome to be part of it, but you will never own it. That's the day you become unforgettable. Not because you played a game, not because you followed tactics, but because you became someone no one could shake. And that, right there, is what a real Stoic embodies. Before we go further, I want to give you something that'll accelerate your growth. The Attraction Handbook, a free ebook packed with simple psychological insights to naturally increase desire, without games or manipulation. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Grab it now before it's gone. Now. Let's move to number 2, losing yourself in her emotions. A Stoic man never does this, and yet, this is one of the most common downfalls. He enters a relationship feeling grounded, confident, but slowly, subtly, he begins to tie his emotional state to hers. When she smiles, he feels like he's flying. When she pulls away, he collapses. Her moods become his compass. Her attention becomes his oxygen. Her validation becomes his worth. and by the time he notices, it's already happened. He's no longer leading his own life. He's reacting to hers. It starts innocently. I care about her. I want to support her. And yes, compassion matters. But there's a fine line between care and codependence. When her emotions start to dictate your energy, your choices, your peace, you've crossed that line. Now, you're not a partner. You're an emotional echo. You mirror her every mood, hoping that if you feel it with her, she'll feel closer to you. But that's not strength. That's surrender. And women feel it. They might not say it, but they sense when you've given up control of your own inner world. Stoicism doesn't mean emotional coldness. It means emotional mastery. A Stoic man can love deeply, support fully, but stay rooted in who he is. He doesn't drown in her storms. He stands steady beside her because he's anchored within himself. He validates her feelings, but he doesn't collapse under them. And when she sees that, when she sees a man who can remain calm, centered, and composed, no matter what she feels, something rare. Not control, not dominance, but deep, unwavering safety. Because the moment you let someone else's emotions control you, you've lost the one thing a Stoic never gives up, his self-command. And the moment she sees you abandon that, she stops trusting your strength. So don't become a passenger on her emotional roller coaster. Be the man who walks beside her but never forgets how to walk on his own. At first, she might enjoy it. She might find a sense of comfort in knowing she can affect you so easily. But deep down, that comfort turns into quiet disappointment, because a man who loses himself in a woman's emotions is no longer her partner. He's become her puppet. And over time, she won't respect that. If you want to see this dynamic in real life, look at the men who are constantly appeasing. They apologize for things they didn't even do just to keep the peace. They stay silent when disrespected, afraid of making things worse. They put their own ambitions on pause because her short-term approval feels more urgent than their long-term purpose. These men think they're being supportive, but in reality they're abandoning themselves. And a Stoic never does that. A Stoic man can sit with a woman in her pain. He can listen, he can hold space, but he never absorbs her storm as his own. He stays firm, present, and grounded, because his sense of self isn't based on her emotional weather. He doesn't rise and fall with her moods. He doesn't chase her approval or panic when her tone shifts. He stays steady, a mountain, not a balloon caught in the wind. And here's the paradox. When you stop losing yourself in her emotions, do you actually feel safer with you? Because the truth is, most women don't want to be the emotional anchor in the relationship. They don't want to carry your state of mind along with their own. They want to know that when they're overwhelmed, you're still steady. That when they feel like the world is spinning, you're still standing. They want strength they can lean on, not fragility that collapses under pressure. The moment you start riding her emotional roller coaster, the relationship begins to lose its foundation. You've made her feelings the god you serve, and no woman can truly love a man who abandons himself like that. But if you can remain grounded, if you can love her fully without becoming her emotional shadow, then you earn something more powerful than temporary affection. You earn her respect, and respect is the foundation of any real connection. Now let's move to number 3. Competing for her attention like a boy among boys. A true Stoic never does this. And yet, this is where so many men fall. They treat attraction like a contest. They see other men as rivals, not because they're weak, but because they've tied their identity to whether or not she looks their way. So they post pictures to provoke a reaction. They dress or speak a certain way to impress her. They play roles that aren't authentic, hoping to stand out in a crowd of desperate faces. But a Stoic doesn't compete. He doesn't need to, because the moment you try to win her like a prize, you've placed yourself beneath her as if she's some queen handing out scraps of attention to whoever performs the best. That's not love. That's servitude. Watch what happens in any room when a beautiful woman walks in. Men shift. They speak louder, act funnier, stand taller, not for themselves, but for her gaze. In those moments they aren't men, they're performers. Peacocks in costume. And while women may enjoy the attention, they rarely respect the men who give it so freely, because deep down they see what it is. Desperation. And desperation is the opposite of attraction. Stoicism teaches us that approval, especially external approval, is fleeting and outside our control. A woman's attention, like anyone's, is her choice. When you compete for it, you surrender your peace of mind to her preferences. You reduce yourself to a product, willing to lower your price just to be chosen. But the Stoic doesn't play that game. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't beg for validation. He walks his path, and if someone is meant to walk beside him, they will. Not because he pleaded, but because he lived in a way that naturally draws people in. No self-respecting man lives like that. A Stoic approaches relationships from a different place. He doesn't try to win her attention. He offers her the opportunity to earn his. He doesn't mold himself to fit her expectations. He stands as he is, grounded, confident, and unshakable. He invites her to step into his world, not as a reward, but as a choice, because he understands something most men never learn. The right woman doesn't need convincing. She doesn't need performance. She sees his value because he already lives it. And here's the truth. No one likes to admit if you have to compete for her attention. You've already lost, because even if you win, you'll live in fear of the next man. The one who's funnier, flashier, more exciting. And once her attention shifts, you're right back in the arena, fighting to be chosen all over again. But the man who doesn't compete, he stands apart. Not because he's arrogant, not because he's cold, but because his sense of worth doesn't depend on whether she notices him. And that's the paradox. The less you chase her gaze, the more she finds herself looking, because self-possession is magnetic. When a man validates himself, lives with purpose, and stands firm in his own values, people naturally gravitate toward him, not because he's begging to be shines. You are the sun. You don't beg planets to orbit you. You radiate, and those who are aligned will find their way into your orbit. When you compete for her attention, you're saying, I need you to see me to feel worthy. But when you don't compete, you say, I see myself. You're free to join or not. And that, right there, is what earns respect. Because real men, Stoic men, don't play status games to win a woman. They don't overextend, outshine, or outmaneuver others. They develop character, pursue purpose, live with integrity, and that energy can't be faked. No act, no charm, no flash can replace it. So the next time you feel the urge to compete for her attention, stop. Ask yourself, am I acting like a man or like a boy chasing approval? Am I rooted in my principles, or selling myself to be accepted? And if that answer stings, good, let it. That's your cue to grow. Because a real Stoic never competes for a woman. He becomes the man who doesn't need to. Now let's talk about number 4, trading your values for her approval. If you're truly Stoic, you will never do this. And yet, this is one of the most common mistakes men make, usually without even realizing it. They meet a woman they're drawn to, and piece by piece, they start cutting away at who they are. They stop doing what they believe in because she disapproves. They silence their convictions to keep her comfortable. They hide parts of themselves, interests, opinions, passions, because they fear losing her, and at first it seems harmless. She doesn't like that you spend time with certain friends, so you distance yourself. She jokes about your goals, so do you stop talking about them. She criticizes something you care about, so you quietly drop it altogether. Each time, you tell yourself it's love, that this is what sacrifice looks like, that it's what a relationship requires. But here's the hard truth. You're not sacrificing for the relationship, you're sacrificing yourself for approval, and a man who gives up who he is in exchange for being loved eventually loses both the love and the man. Because while a woman may initially enjoy the influence, deep down she starts to lose respect. And when respect fades, desire follows. The foundation of true attraction isn't agreement, it's trust. Trust in your convictions. Trust in your backbone. When she sees that you're willing to bend your morals, your purpose, your identity, just to keep her, she stops seeing you as someone she can rely on. You become someone she can shape, and a man who can be shaped for comfort isn't one she craved. Stoicism teaches us that virtue, living in alignment with our principles, is the highest good. A Stoic doesn't bend his ethics for comfort or chase temporary pleasure at the cost of integrity. He doesn't compromise his core values to be accepted, because he knows that approval, especially approval bought through self-betrayal, is hollow. But sadly, many men live as if approval is oxygen, terrified of her disapproval, terrified of making her uncomfortable, terrified of being alone, and so they fold, they give in. They build relationships on silence and self-erasure, thinking it will keep her around. But a relationship built on dishonesty and dishonesty with yourself is destined to collapse. So ask yourself, what kind of love are you really receiving if you had to abandon who you are to get it? That's not love, that's survival. The Stoic doesn't play that game. He enters a relationship as a whole man, a man with a code, a man with unshakable values, a man who cannot be negotiated into submission. He is kind, but not a doormat. He is loving, but not ruled by emotion. He is willing to compromise on logistics, but never on character. And here's the paradox. The more you live by your values, the more respect you command. The same woman who once pushed against your boundaries begins to see you differently, not as someone to shape, but as someone to trust, someone solid, someone unmoved with. When you trade your values for her comfort, you become addicted to her validation. You walk on eggshells. You live in fear. Fear of upsetting her, fear of rejection, fear of being too much, and fear turns you from a man into a boy. But when you stand firm in who you are, everything shifts. You are no longer begging to be accepted. You're inviting her into your life on your terms, with mutual respect as the standard. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like saying no, even when it might upset her. It means refusing to drop your mission, your friends, your growth just to make her feel secure. It means telling the truth about what you want, who you are, and where you're going, even if your voice shakes. It means being willing to lose her before you ever lose yourself. Because if she can only love you when you betray your values, then she doesn't love you. She loves the version of you she imagined. And you deserve to be loved for who you truly are, or not at all. A Stoic man does not trade integrity for affection. He understands his principles are more valuable than any attention, any approval, or any fleeting romance. He lives by the words of Epictetus. It is better to starve with integrity than to live in luxury with a troubled soul. Because when you hold on to yourself, you keep your soul intact. And when your soul is intact, no woman, no matter how beautiful, no matter how magnetic, can ever destroy you. Which brings us to number 5, making her the center of your life. A true Stoic never does this. You will never find a grounded man orbiting around a woman like a lost planet hoping for warmth. You will never see him abandon his ambitions, his discipline, or his identity just to keep her near. And yet that's exactly where most men fail. They meet a woman, and slowly, sometimes without even realizing it, their entire world begins to revolve around her. They abandon routines, friendships, passions, purpose. Their sense of self dissolves into a fog of infatuation, and at first it feels intoxicating. She's beautiful, she's exciting, she gives you the emotional highs you've been missing. So you start prioritizing her over everything. You wake up thinking about her. You text her the moment your eyes open. You cancel plans without hesitation. You say yes to her every need, even when it means saying no to your own. And it feels romantic. It feels like devotion. But it's not devotion, it's disorientation. And that kind of imbalance always comes with a price. You tell yourself, this is what love is supposed to be. Constant contact, total sacrifice. But in truth, it's obsession wearing the mask of affection. The Stoics understood something modern men often forget. When you make another person the center of your life, you give them the power to destroy it. When she becomes your world, her moods dictate your emotions. Her attention becomes your fuel, her approval, your oxygen. And what happens when she pulls away? What happens when she needs space? Or worse, when she leaves? You collapse. Not because she left, but because you built your entire existence around something you never controlled in the first place. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A Stoic man lives by this truth. He doesn't surrender his stability by centering his life on something or someone here. Cannot command. Yes, he can love deeply. Yes, he can commit fully. But his roots remain in his purpose, his mission, and his inner code. Because when your life is built around your own growth, your own values, your own direction, you become unshakable. And ironically, that's the exact kind of man women gravitate toward. Because here's the secret. Women don't really want to be your entire world. They might say they do. They might enjoy the spotlight at first, but deep down, what they truly desire is a man who has a life bigger than them, a man on a mission, a man who chooses them not because he needs them, but because he values sharing the journey. The moment you abandon your purpose to orbit her life, you lose the very thing that made her admire you in the first place. Think of the men who've disappeared into their relationships. Maybe you know one, maybe you've been one. They stop growing, stop pushing, stop dreaming. Their friendships fade, their goals die. Their fire dims. They become her boyfriend or her husband, and slowly, the identity they once held with pride begins to vanish, until one day, she looks at him and quietly asks herself, where did the man I fell for go? The truth, he didn't go anywhere. He just erased himself trying to keep her, and that erasure kills respect, it kills attraction, because no woman can truly admire a man who gave up his soul to orbit hers. A Stoic doesn't do that. He doesn't pause his mission for romance. He doesn't dim his light so someone else can shine. He stands rooted in who he is and where he's going. He knows the greatest gift he can offer isn't constant availability, it's presence. Steady.com, anchored, especially when life gets chaotic. And here's the paradox. When you stop making her your center. She actually feels safer with you, because she knows you won't lose yourself in her emotions. She knows you won't collapse when she gets overwhelmed. She knows you're not going anywhere, not because you need her, but because you choose her. That kind of groundedness is rare, and it's magnetic. So take inventory of your life right now. Remove her from the picture for a moment. Who are you without her? Do you still wake up with purpose? Do you still pursue excellence? Or do you feel lost, like your identity vanishes when she's not around? If that question stings, it should. It means you've handed her a role she was never meant to fill. A woman can be an incredible part of your life, a partner, a supporter, a source of joy. But she should never be the reason you exist. That role belongs to your purpose, your discipline, your growth, because when you give that role to her, it's no longer love, it's worship. And no woman wants to be worshipped. No human being can carry the weight of being someone else's God. So don't make her the center. Build your center around something unshakable, your mission, your integrity, your mastery of self. Then invite her to share in it, not as your reason for living, but as a woman walking beside a man who's fully alive. Because when you stop orbiting her like she's the sun, you become the sun. You shine, you lead, you attract, you live the way a real Stoic lives, grounded, unshakable, and free. One day, you're grounded, confident in your own skin, living your life on your terms. Then you meet her. She's beautiful, intoxicating, unpredictable. Suddenly your entire emotional world hinges on how she feels about you. When she's warm and affectionate, you're euphoric. When she pulls away, you feel crushed. Her praise makes you feel like a god. Her criticism sends you spiraling into doubt. This right here is one of the quietest, deadliest traps a man can fall into. Addiction to her emotional highs and devastation from her lows. It feels like passion, it feels like love, but it's not. It's dependency, and dependency hollows you out until there's nothing left of the man you were before she showed up. Stoicism teaches that peace doesn't come from controlling others or being controlled by them. Peace comes from mastering yourself. But when you get hooked on her highs, you hand her the remote control to your emotions. She presses the buttons that make you feel alive, and when she stops, you crash. This cycle exhausts you. You live for those moments, her texts that make your heart race. Nights when she's fully present. Moments when you feel like the center of her world, and in between, you wither. You obsess over what went wrong. Replay her words. Analyze her tone, her silences, her body language. You stop living as a man with purpose. You become a man chasing emotional dopamine, and she can feel it. Even if she doesn't fully understand it, she senses when her approval is your lifeline, and instead of feeling loved, she feels burdened, because no woman wants to carry the weight of a man's emotional existence. She wants a partner, not a dependent. She wants a man who can love deeply but doesn't collapse when she pulls away. Here's the paradox. The more you get hooked on her highs, the more erratic her behavior. It becomes. Why? Because she knows, even if only subconsciously, that you'll tolerate anything to get back to that high. She can test your limits, push your boundaries, pull away, and you'll still chase her, addicted to the version of her that makes you feel alive. A Stoic refuses this game. He enjoys the highs, who wouldn't? The intimacy, the affection, the validation, but he doesn't need them. His emotional state doesn't depend on whether she's warm or cold, present or distant. He remains steady because his identity, his worth, his joy are not tied to her moods. That steadiness changes everything. When she withdraws, instead of chasing, he observes. Instead of panicking, he stays grounded. It changes how he handles conflict. No explosions, no collapse. He holds his frame, and it changes how she sees him, not as an emotional dependent, but as a man who can weather storms without losing himself. If you want to know if you've fallen into this trap, ask yourself, when she pulls back, do I lose myself? Do I feel like my world is falling apart? Do I spend more time reacting to her than acting on my own purpose? If yes, you've built your emotional life on shifting sands, and we all know what happens to structures built on shifting sands when storms come. A Stoic builds his life on rock. He can love her, cherish her, share his world, but he never hands her the keys to his emotional kingdom. That kingdom belongs to him alone. So how do you break free? You build a life so full, so purpose-driven that her highs become a bonus, not a lifeline. You strengthen your mind and body so her criticisms can't shatter you. You cultivate a self so rooted in your values that her praise, while appreciated, never defines you. Love her, desire her, enjoy the highs, but never need them, because the man hooked on her highs will always be crushed by her lows. 7. Overreact when she tests you. No, if you're truly Stoic, you will never overreact when a woman tests you. And yes, she will test you. Every woman does. Not because she's cruel or manipulative, but because testing is part of her nature. It's how she figures out who you really are beneath the surface. It's her way of checking if the man she's with is the same one he pretends to be. But most men fail these tests miserably, not because they can't see them coming, but because they let their emotions hijack them. You know how it goes. She says something sharp, something designed to get under your skin. Maybe she pushes a boundary. Maybe she flirts with someone else in front of you to see how you react. Maybe she criticizes you not out of hatred, but to see if you'll collapse or hold your ground. And what do most men do? They explode. They argue, they yell. They spiral into defensiveness, desperate to prove themselves in the heat of the moment. Or they do the opposite. They shut down completely, sulk, withdraw, punish her with cold silence because they don't know how else to respond. Both reactions fail the test. Why? Because they show her you can be controlled. They show her your emotions are on a leash she can tug whenever she wants. And a man whose emotions are so easily manipulated cannot be trusted to lead himself, let alone a relationship. Stoicism teaches us that the only thing truly under our control is our own mind, not others' actions, not opinions, not external chaos, only our response. So when a woman tests you, a Stoic sees it for what it is, a moment to practice mastery of himself. He doesn't take the bait. He doesn't turn her jab into an existential war. He doesn't crumble under pressure. He breathes. He observes. He stays rooted in his frame. Here's what most men don't get. Women test because they want to see what's real. They don't want the performance, the perfect mask you wear on dates or texts. They want to know if you're grounded or just pretending. When you overreact, you answer that question for them. You're pretending. Your confidence was surface level. Your composure was conditional. The minute pressure appeared, you lost yourself. But when you don't overreact, when you stay calm, when you handle tests with grace or humor, when you make it clear her actions don't define your emotional state, everything changes. She sees a man who cannot be easily shaken, a man who doesn't crumble under emotional chaos, a man who can lead himself even when provoked. That doesn't mean you ignore disrespect. Being stoic isn't passive, it means addressing problems from strength, not chaos. If she crosses a line, you let her know calmly, clearly, and without begging. You show her boundaries exist and you enforce them without throwing a tantrum. Remember Marcus Aurelius. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That's Stoicism in relationships. Her test isn't what destroys you, your reaction is. Here's the paradox. When you stop overreacting, the tests often stop, too. Why? Because she realizes she can't control you. She realizes you are who you say you are, steady, grounded, unshakable. And that's when respect grows. That's when trust deepens. That's when she relaxes into you, knowing you won't lose yourself when things get difficult. If you want to know whether you've been overreacting, look at your patterns. Do you fight over little things? Do you find yourself begging for reassurance? Do you lash out when she pulls away only to apologize later when you calm down? If so, you're failing the very test designed to reveal your strength. A Stoic man doesn't play that game. He refuses to let anyone else, even the woman he loves, decide how he feels about himself. He chooses calm over chaos, logic over impulse, groundedness over reaction. The next time she tests you, take a breath. See it for what it is, not an attack, but an opportunity. An opportunity to prove to her and to yourself that you are a man, in control of his emotions. Because when you stop overreacting, you don't just pass her test, you pass life's test. 8. Measure your worth by how she treats you. Never, if you are truly stoic. You will never measure your worth by how a woman treats you. Yet, this is the silent trap that swallows men whole. They don't see it happening until one day they wake up and realize their entire sense of self is tied to her approval, how she talks to them, how much attention she gives, how affectionate she is. When she's loving and present, they feel like kings. When she's distant or cold, they feel worthless. Their emotional state rises and falls like a tide controlled by her moods. This is how men lose themselves slowly, invisibly, without a fight. A man who measures his worth by how a woman treats him is no longer his own. He's outsourced his value. He's put it in her hands, trusting her to handle it with care. And when she doesn't, he breaks. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like bending over backward to please her. Sometimes it looks like chasing her attention when she pulls away. Sometimes it looks like obsessing over every text message, replaying every word she says, searching for meaning in the smallest gestures. But at its core, it's the same sickness. Believing her behavior defines your value. A Stoic man knows better. He knows that how others treat you, whether it's a woman, a boss, or a stranger, says more about them than it does about you. He knows worth is intrinsic, built from the inside out, rooted in your principles, your discipline, your purpose. It doesn't change because someone praises you, and it doesn't disappear because someone disrespects you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Her actions are outside events. You can't control or predict them. You can only control how you respond. So, what does this look like in real life? When she's affectionate, you enjoy it, but you don't cling to it like oxygen. When she's cold, you don't crumble or beg. You stay rooted in who you are. When she disrespects you, you don't spiral into self-loathing. You calmly enforce your boundaries and walk away if you must. Your worth doesn't come from her treating you like a king. Your worth comes from living like one. This is where most men fail. They think a woman's love makes them valuable. They think being chosen makes them worthy. But if your worth can be given by someone, it can also be taken by them. That's a dangerous place to live. Instead, the Stoic builds a life where his value is unquestionable, not because she validates it, but because he validates himself. He wakes up with purpose. He disciplines his body and mind. He lives by a code. Whether anyone's watching or not, he knows his value is constant like a mountain, unshaken by the storms of her moods or the seasons of her affection. When you stop measuring your worth by how she treats you, everything changes. You stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop performing for approval. You start living as a man who is complete within himself. And paradoxically, that's when she treats you better. Because women respect men who don't need their approval to breathe. They respect men who can love them deeply but still walk away if they're disrespected. They respect men who don't let their emotions rise and fall based on someone else's behavior. If you've been living like this, measuring your worth by her moods, it's time to cut the cord. It's time to take your value back, not as a performance, not as a tactic to win her over, but because no man should live as a slave to anyone's approval. You are not her emotional puppet. You are not a mirror for her feelings. You are a man, and a man's worth, if he is truly Stoic, is untouchable. 9. Fear losing yourself more than you fear her leaving. If you are truly Stoic, you will never fear a woman leaving more than you fear losing yourself. Yet this is the quiet tragedy of so many men. They endure disrespect, betrayal, and self-eraser behavior just to avoid being left. They cling to relationships long after they've died, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of loneliness, fear of rejection, fear of facing the truth about who they are without her. And in that fear they destroy themselves. They swallow insults to keep the peace. They compromise their values to keep her happy. They abandon their purpose, their boundaries, their very identity, all for one desperate goal. Don't let her go. But here's the paradox. The more you live like this, the more she will pull away. Because no woman can truly love or respect a man who sacrifices his soul just to keep her around. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." The thought of her leaving only destroys you because you've judged it to mean something it doesn't, that you're unworthy, unlovable, incomplete. But what if it doesn't mean any of that? What if her leaving simply means she's no longer aligned with your path? What if it's just an event? Painful, yes, but not defining. That's what a Stoic knows. A Stoic doesn't cling. He loves fully, but with an open hand, not a clenched fist. He understands that people come and go, that relationships change, that nothing external is ever truly permanent. Instead of fighting reality, he embraces it. He knows his worth doesn't rise when she stays, and it doesn't fall when she leaves. But when you fear her leaving more than you fear losing yourself, you reverse that truth. You give her the power to define you. You say, "You are my anchor. Without you, I am nothing." And once you believe that you will do anything and keep her, even if it means betraying the man you are supposed to be. You can see this in men everywhere. The ones who tolerate disrespect because they don't want to be single. The ones who let their dreams die because they're afraid their ambition will drive her away. The ones who live silently resentful lives, trapped in relationships that no longer serve them because the thought of walking away terrifies them more than living a lie. This isn't love. It's fear dressed as devotion. The Stoic does the opposite. He fears losing himself more than losing anyone else, because he knows that when you lose yourself, you lose everything. You become a hollow shell, a man who exists only to please, to serve, to survive in someone else's orbit. That's not living. That's captivity. So what does it mean to live without this fear? It means you enter relationships from a place of strength, not desperation. It means you hold your boundaries even when she pushes against them. It means you love her deeply, but You're willing to walk away if the cost of staying is your soul. And here's the irony. When you stop fearing her leaving, you become more attractive because you radiate the energy of a man who cannot be broken. You don't grip her out of panic. You choose her out of freedom. And that's the kind of man a woman truly wants. Not a hostage, but a partner. If you've been living in fear, ask yourself, who am I without her? If that question terrifies you, good, that means you've given her a role. She was never meant to hold the role of defining your very existence. Take it back. Build a life so full, so purpose-driven, so rooted in your principles, that no relationship, no matter how beautiful, ever cost you yourself. Because losing her might hurt, but losing yourself, that's a wound that never heals. 10. Don't confuse desire for dependency. If you are truly stoic, you will never confuse desire with dependency. Yet this subtle, devastating mistake unravels so many men. They meet a woman who excites them, inspires them, lights up parts of themselves they didn't know existed. They mistake that spark for necessity. They start believing that wanting her means they need her, that love requires dependency, that life without her would be meaningless. And in that confusion, they destroy the very foundation of their strength. Desire is natural, it's human. The Stoics never taught us to suppress or deny it. They taught us to observe it, understand it, and enjoy it without becoming enslaved by it. A Stoic can look at a beautiful woman, feel the pull toward her, and still remain grounded in himself. But most men can't. They don't just want her, they build their identity around having her. They don't just enjoy her, they become addicted to her. And addiction is not love. Addiction is worship. When you confuse desire with dependency, you stop being a man who chooses to become a man who clings. You put her on a pedestal so high that you forget you're standing at the bottom, gazing up, begging for scraps. You can't think clearly because your judgment is clouded by the fear of losing her. You can't set boundaries because you're terrified they might drive her away. You can't live fully because every moment is consumed by her, what she's thinking, feeling, how she sees you. This is where men lose their power. They confuse their longing for her with the belief that they cannot exist without her. They think, if she leaves, I will break. And when you live like that, you become easy to control. You will bend, will compromise. You will become whoever she wants because your existence now depends on her approval. But a Stoic knows better. He knows that desire is a visitor, not a master. He can want her fiercely without making her the center of his universe. He can love her deeply without needing her to validate his worth. He can enjoy the connection without believing it defines his existence. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." A Stoic doesn't crave in a way that destroys him. He doesn't mistake the thrill of desire for the anchor of necessity. He is whole before she arrives, and he will remain whole if she leaves. That's the balance most men never learn to strike. They think the only options are cold detachment or total enthrallment, but real strength lies in the middle. To love without losing yourself, to want without worshipping, to walk beside her without kneeling at her feet. If you've been confusing desire for dependency, take a hard look at your life. Ask yourself, am I with her because I choose her, or because I choose her, or because I fear life without her? If the answer stings, good, that's your wake-up call. Because a man who needs a woman to feel alive has already surrendered the very thing that makes him attractive, his independence. Desire her, admire her, love her, but do it as a man who is full on his own, not as a man trying to fill the holes in his soul with her presence. When you stop confusing desire with dependency, you reclaim your freedom, and when you are free, you don't just become more stoic, you become unstoppable. If you take nothing else from this, take this. A Stoic never abandons himself for anyone, not for a woman, not for love, not for the fleeting comfort of approval, because the moment you make her your oxygen, you suffocate the man you were meant to be. Love her, but don't worship her. Desire her, but don't depend on her. Let her into your world, but never let her become your world. Your mission, your principles, your sense of self, these are non-negotiable. Protect them like your life depends on it, because it does. And if she leaves, withdraws, or tests your resolve, you do what a real Stoic does. You stand firm, you don't chase, you don't crumble. You remain unshakable, because that's the one thing no one, not even the woman you love, should ever be able to take from you, yourself. If you've ever lost yourself in a relationship but are ready to take yourself back, comment below. I will not lose myself. Let's see how many men are ready to live as true Stoics.